Two friends, same age, same salary, same amount saved. One decision was about to split their financial future in half. By the time this video ends, you'll understand exactly why that one choice matters more than almost anything else in personal finance, and which side of it you're standing on right now. Picture two friends in their mid-30s, living in the same city, earning the exact same $95,000 a year. Both have somehow managed to save the same amount too, $100,000 sitting quietly in their bank accounts. On paper, their financial lives are basically identical twins, down to the very last dollar. Then comes the question almost every renter eventually faces: keep paying rent or finally buy? Sitting across a kitchen table one Sunday afternoon, calculator in hand, each of them reaches a completely different answer to that exact same question, using the exact same numbers in front of them. One decides a mortgage is the smartest use of that money. The other decides the stock market is. Neither of them is wrong yet. They're simply standing at the same fork, about to walk in opposite directions for the next 20 years of their lives. The friend who chose to buy puts almost his entire savings toward a $420,000 house. He signs the papers, gets the keys, and stands in an empty living room, feeling something a rented apartment never quite gave him: the sense that this place is finally his. For the first few weeks, that feeling is worth every penny. Friends come over for dinner, he paints a wall the color he actually wants, and he hangs a shelf without asking anyone's permission first. Homeownership, at least on the surface, feels like an upgrade in every direction. But underneath that pride, a very different story is already being written. The mortgage statement that arrives at the end of the first month tells a much less flattering version of events, one that has nothing to do with paint colors or empty living rooms. The friend who chose to rent takes the opposite approach entirely. Instead of a down payment, he takes his full $100,000 and drops it straight into a diversified investment fund. No new keys, no fresh coat of paint, no bragging rights at the next family barbecue. Every single month he does something far less exciting than signing a mortgage. He calculates the difference between his rent and what a mortgage payment on that same house would have cost, and he invests that difference too, without fail. It's a routine as boring as folding laundry, repeated month after month after month. There's no ribbon-cutting moment here, no housewarming party, nothing to photograph for social media. Just money moving from one account into another, over and over, while everyone else assumes he's simply the one who didn't buy a house yet. A few months in, the friend who bought the house sits down and actually reads his mortgage statement line by line for the first time. What he finds catches him off guard. Almost all of that monthly payment is being swallowed up by interest, not by the loan itself. Out of every few $100s he sends the bank, only a small slice actually chips away at what he owes. The rest simply covers the cost of borrowing the money. His loan balance, after month of payments, has barely moved. This is the part of home ownership that never makes it into the glossy real estate listings or the proud social media posts. Building equity through a mortgage is real, but in the early years, it moves at a pace closer to a snail than a sprinter, no matter how big the monthly check feels. Then come the bills nobody mentioned during the house tour. Property taxes show up every year, usually growing right along with the home's value. Insurance premiums land in the mailbox not long after. Neither of these was ever part of the mortgage calculator he used before signing anything. And then there's maintenance. The furnace that stops working in January, the roof that starts leaking after a heavy storm, the water heater that picks the worst possible week to give out. None of this comes with a payment plan or an advance warning. Add it all together, and the true monthly cost of owning that $420,000 house turns out to be a completely different number than the one printed at the top of the mortgage statement. Owning a home was never just about the mortgage, that was only ever the headline figure. While one friend is dealing with furnace repairs and property tax bills, the friend who rented is doing something almost boring in comparison. Nothing extra at all. He pays his rent, transfers his monthly investment, and moves on with the rest of his day. Because his housing costs stay lower month to month, he has more breathing room to keep feeding that investment account without stretching his budget. There's no roof to fix, no insurance premium creeping upward, no surprise repair bill waiting around the corner to drain his savings. Every dollar he adds keeps earning on top of the dollars he already added, quarter after quarter, year after year. time starts doing more of the work than his own paycheck does. If a small, steady habit can quietly grow into something this powerful, what else might people be underestimating simply because it looks unglamorous? Here's the strange part. The friend who rented isn't doing anything sophisticated to pull ahead. He's not picking hot stocks, chasing trends, or checking his portfolio 5 times a day. He's just repeating the same unremarkable action month after month without skipping a single one. No spreadsheet trick, no insider tip, no lucky timing. Just a consistent deposit into a diversified fund, left alone to do its job while he goes about his regular life, working his regular job, living in his regular apartment week after week. In these early years, that unglamorous habit is actually outpacing the equity building up in his friend's house. Consistency, it turns out, can beat effort when effort isn't required to show up every single day. But 20 years is a long stretch of road, and plenty can still shift along the way before this story is finished. Fast forward a few years, and a familiar envelope shows up in the mailbox, the lease renewal notice, with a new number at the bottom that's higher than last year's. It happens again the year after that, and the year after that one too. Each increase is small enough on its own, an extra $50 or $70 a month, but stacked up over a decade, that steady climb starts chipping away at the gap between renting and owning. The comfortable cushion from those first few years isn't quite as wide anymore. Meanwhile, the amount he sets aside for investing has to stretch a little further to cover the higher rent, leaving less room for extra contributions. The math that once so clearly favored renting is no longer quite so one-sided. A new renewal notice sits on the kitchen counter, unopened. The friend who bought his house is dealing with a completely different reality. His mortgage payment today looks almost identical to what it was 5 years ago, aside from a small bump in property taxes and insurance. No renewal notice, no yearly surprise, just the same fixed number every month. Meanwhile, 2 things are happening behind the scenes without him lifting a finger. The value of the house keeps climbing as the local market grows, and every payment chips away a little more at what he still owes the bank. His equity is building on 2 fronts at once. He never had to negotiate a lower rate, beat the market, or make a single clever decision after signing the paperwork. The structure of the loan itself is doing the work for him, one ordinary payment at a time. How much of wealth building really comes down to simply staying in place? 20 years slip by, and it's finally time to add everything up. The friend who rented checks his investment account and finds a number far larger than the $100,000 he started with. Decades of consistent deposits and market growth have quietly multiplied into real wealth. The friend who bought pulls up his home's current value instead. The house that once cost $420,000 is now worth considerably more, and the mortgage he signed 2 decades ago is either paid off or close to it. His equity sits mostly inside 4 walls and a roof. Both numbers side by side are genuinely impressive. One friend built his fortune inside a brokerage account he barely had to think about. The other built his inside a house he lived in every day. Neither path was wrong, but only one of them required daily discipline to work. Here's the part of this story that rarely gets mentioned. None of that portfolio growth happens automatically. The friend who rented only ends up ahead because he actually moved that money every single month for 20 straight years, without once deciding to skip it or spend it on something else. If he had used that extra cash for a nicer car, a few extra vacations, or simply let it sit in a checking account earning almost nothing, this entire story would look completely different. Renting doesn't build wealth by itself. It only creates the opportunity for wealth, nothing more. That opportunity has to be paired with real, boring, repeated discipline, month after month, for years that stretch far beyond any New Year's resolution. Take away that discipline, and the entire advantage disappears fast, leaving behind just someone who never got around to buying a house. The friend who bought his house had a very different experience with discipline. He barely needed any. His mortgage payment left his account automatically every single month, whether he felt motivated that day or not. There was no moment where he had to consciously choose to save. It's like a forced savings plan built directly into his housing cost. Skip a car payment, and the bank calls. Skip a mortgage payment, and the consequences are even more serious, which is exactly why almost nobody skips one. That built-in pressure steadily turned his monthly bill into real equity. For someone who struggles to set money aside on their own, that structure is genuinely valuable. He didn't need willpower, a budgeting app, or a New Year's resolution. He just needed to keep living in the house he already owned, month after ordinary month. So which one actually wins? Renting or buying? The honest answer is less satisfying than either side wants to hear. It depends on the person holding the calculator, not just the numbers on the page in front of them. Buying tends to make the most sense for someone planning to stay in one place for many years, who values stability and doesn't want to think about rent increases every 12 months. The mortgage becomes a form of forced structure that works quietly in the background of an otherwise busy life. Renting tends to make more sense for someone who values flexibility, might relocate for a job or a relationship, and genuinely has the discipline to invest the difference instead of spending it. Neither choice is universally smarter. The only real mistake is assuming there's one correct answer for every single person reading this. At the end of 20 years, it was never really about the house or the rental agreement. It was about what each person chose to do with the money left over once the bills were paid. That single habit, repeated for 2 decades, mattered more than either the property or the portfolio itself. Wealth was never built by the roof over anyone's head. It was built underneath it, in the small, unglamorous decisions made every single month. The deposit that wasn't skipped, the mortgage payment that never bounced, the difference that got invested instead of spent on something easier to enjoy right now. So the real question was never renting versus buying. It was always this: what will you actually do with the money once the decision is made? That answer, more than any address on a deed or a lease, decides who ends up wealthy 20 years from today. If this breakdown changed the way you think about renting and buying, follow this channel for more real, honest looks at how everyday financial decisions actually play out over time. Now here's a question worth sitting with. If you were standing at that exact same fork in the road today, with the exact same amount saved, which path would you actually choose? The house or the portfolio? Drop your answer in the comments below, and let's see which side wins the debate.